Hi, it's Jo Bills from Freshagenda with our weekly take. And this week we're looking back over the first 6 months of global dairy trade with our latest trade trends report. And we've seen over the first 6 months that global trade in major dairy commodity groups has increased by about 1.5 billion litres milk equivalent, or around about 5%. It mostly reflects constrained trade in early 2016. That was when we saw a lot of skim milk powder being put into intervention by EU producers rather than exported. But we've also seen in the last couple of months that we've had a bit of an uptick from those EU exporters and also from New Zealand. In terms of the buy side, we've really seen Southeast Asia that's provided the most support for global dairy trade. They've increased their imports fairly steadily over that time. And at the other end of the spectrum, it's the Middle East that have really dropped out and been noticeably absent. Now, looking at the trends for the major commodities, whole milk powder trade has been lower than prior years for the first 6 months, with most exporters, particularly in South America, well down on the prior year. New Zealand whole milk powder shipments have picked up in later months as they've cleared their end of season stocks. But we've seen weaker domestic production in China, and the Hong Kong region has really increased import demand for whole milk powder. But it's still very much hand to mouth. We are sort of seeing those trends that we're used to seeing in terms of a lot of buying at the beginning of the calendar year when the tariff window opens under the New Zealand-China Free Trade Agreement, that we've seen a lot of activity in those early months. That's not happening so much now, and we're really seeing those new Chinese buyers much more hand to mouth in their buying. For skim milk powder, trade volumes were the highest ever for the first 6 months to June. EU exporters were aggressive, increasing shipments by 74% in the 3 months to June after a fairly slow start to the year. It sounds impressive, but we also again have to remember that those comparatives are against the first 6 months of 2016, where a lot of that skim milk powder was being put into intervention stores. Southeast Asia again has been a key market for those skim milk powder imports. They've improved their trade in the last 3 months to those markets, and China and Hong Kong have also been strong buying regions. Mexican imports of skim milk powder have also been quite healthy for most of 2017, and it's interesting to see that while the US is still the dominant supplier to that market, just in the last little while we have seen increasing shares going to EU exporters as well as Canada. And in the context of the US, Mexico and Canada now sitting down to renegotiate their NAFTA agreement, free trade agreement, perhaps it's a little bit of a shot over the bows from Mexico. Cheese has really been the quiet achiever when it comes to global dairy trade, mostly driven by increased US activity, supported by the Cooperatives Working Together program, and also a slightly weaker US currency. We expect the US activity will probably increase a bit more over the next few months. They've got steadily growing milk output, continual falls in fluid milk sales, and so they'll probably have a bit more cheese to offer on world markets where demand has been fairly steady. And on the buy side, it's really North Asia that's been leading the way. Japan and Korea have increased their imports of cheese over the first 6 months of 2017. And Southeast Asia has also been a steady growth region again for cheese. In fact, we've tracked year-on-year growth has been positive for the last 13 consecutive months, so that's very encouraging for that region as well. Finally, butter and AMF. We've seen record high butter prices over the last little while, and that's been a combination of constrained supply and fairly robust demand, particularly in some of those Northern Hemisphere markets. Of course, the lack of supply has restricted trade in the first 6 months of 2017. On the demand side, we've really seen the Middle East and North Africa, very price-sensitive buyers, pull right back. That's a wrap from us this week at Fresh Agenda. I've been Jo Bills, and I'll see you next time.